Hey everybody, and welcome back to our review of Kit's Castle Cup. This is round 2, game 3, the final game of round 2. We have Infernowl with the white pieces and Kitsune Cavalry with the black pieces. And this certainly was a fun game that ended quite tragically. So we have Infernowl opening with F4 and Kit responding with D5, the Dutch variation of the bird opening. E3 defending the pawn on F4, and C5 Kit just trying to take space. G3 connecting all the pawns and making a nice little pawn structure. However, it's not probably not best to do it on the king side as you lose king defense. However, it looks nice, so that's all that matters. Knight to C6, maybe looking to prepare push of the d pawn. Maybe looking to just grab more space. However, bishop to g2 prevents this, as if you push the pawn now, then you lose the knight, and then when pawn takes, then you have doubled pawns, and then pawn takes, and it's just not good. E6 defending the pawn on d5. Knight to f3, this blocks the bishop. However, it does allow you to go to, however, it does attack the e5 square. Bishop to d6, maybe looking to prepare e5 at some point. B3, this stops any advances of the c pawn. Knight to f6. Maybe looking to get an outpost on e4 or g4. Also defending the d pawn. Now, bishop to a3. This attacks this pawn and by extension also attacks the bishop behind it. It also fiend shadows the bishop. However, a better move probably would have been b2, because then you attack the knight on f6, and you also attack e5, because then if you were to push e5, then takes, and then bishop takes, and then your bishop would take, and you'd be in a pretty good spot. And then if a knight takes, and then you're fairly well off. However, b6, defending the c pawn, is it's not very well defended, as it's only defended by the bishop. Castles and castles, and knight to g5. It's not a great move because it's very easily kicked away with h6. However, you're attacking the e pawn, the e5 pawn, and you're also maybe looking at h7 at some point in the future if you can take out this pawn. Maybe push up and then takes, and then you can go here and then takes, and then you lose, and it's great. Pawn to h6 indeed does want to challenge this knight, and Kit Infernowl gladly retreats to h3. Rook to e8, continuing to look at e5. Maybe it'll ever get played. Bishop to b2, probably the square it should have been on in the first place. However, it is finally there, so that's all that matters. Bishop to d7 by Kit, develops the bishop, defends the knight. Doesn't really need defending though. Although, maybe if you wanna head to f3 and then e2, you could attack the knight. Yeah, totally. And then you attack the rook, and then you win. It's great. a4, kind of unnecessary. Doesn't really do anything for white. Doesn't do all that much for white anyway, as it's just, you could get in with the knight possibly. A5, taking space on the queen side, I guess. However, mildly unnecessary, as it's not like he was going to push a5, because then he just gets taken. Knight to a3, looking to take a outpost on b5 as the a pawn is pushed. So maybe looking at something quite nice later. Knight to b4, Not a very good square for the knight because it's very easily kicked out with c3. However, there the knight is. Knight to f2 by Infernowl, maybe looking to reposition the knight on d3. And queen to c8, not a great move, as you still should be pushing the c pawn or the e pawn, e5 at this point. But now if you push the e5 pawn, and then you could attack with your bishop, and it's defended by the queen, so not a bad attack. Maybe looking towards the future. So knight to d3, attacking this knight. Knight captures on d3, and pawn captures on d3. Probably a better move would have been to maybe take with the bishop, but this is fine. E5 finally is played. So we have pawn captures on e5, bishop captures on e5, bishop captures on e5, rook captures on e5, and then Infernowl ends the trading with rook to c1, attacking with an x-ray attack against the queen. Bishop to h3, not great, although it's defended by the queen. Infernowl does not accept the trade of bishops. However, instead chooses to play knight b5, maybe looking to sneak on in here and attack the queen. Bishop captures on g2, and king captures on g2, and rook to g5. Maybe a better idea would have been to h5 as it's defended by the knight, and then you could play queen h3, and that's a very, very powerful attack. But this is fine. Your rook's not attacked, at least. Rook to f3, getting the rook kind of more into the game, although you're not really doing anything with this move. You're just kind of bringing the rook up. h5, looking to push that nice little pawn there. Knight to d6, finally looking to attack the queen, attacking this pawn. Queen to d7, moving the queen out of the way, but still controlling this diagonal. Knight captures on f7, not a good move, because queen captures on f7. e4, pushing the e pawn, although it's attacked twice, so this isn't a good move, because if the pawn were to capture, then pawn captures. Knight captures, however, d4, alright move. h4, attacking the rook. Rook to g4. you kind of lose a piece because it's pinned. So e5 and queen to d5, and pawn captures on f6. So good job by the pawn. Pawn captures on f6, just getting that pawn back. And queen to e1, maybe looking to attack. King to f7, getting him off the file, or getting him off this row. And maybe looking to bring the rook into the game as well later. Rook to c2 doesn't really do much. Probably would have been better to put the queen on e2, because then it defends the rook. So queen captures on b3, and rook to f5. Queen captures on c2, so you kind of lose the rook, which is very unfortunate because you're already down material. However, rook captures on h5, looking to get that material right back. Queen captures on d3, taking back that material. And now rook to h7. This, unfortunately, is a very, very big mistake, as you now have a hanging rook that the queen will take, with queen captures on h7. and then queen to d1. At this point, game's pretty much over because black has 2 rooks and a queen, and white has a queen and a couple of pawns. However, white will truck on with queen captures on h4, and the pawn cannot capture as it is pinned by the rook. So queen provides check with queen to b3, and the king just moves out of the way with king to g7. And the queen captures on b6, queen captures on g3, and this is a very, very good check as the queen is defended by the rook. So king to f1, and then queen to d3 check, king to f2, queen captures on d2 with check, and then king to f3. Now in this position, it is mate in 1. If you move the queen to g2, this is mate, as the king has nowhere to go, as this space, as the e3 square is attacked by the pawn. However, in this position, Kit plays rook to f4, allowing the king to survive for but a few more moves. And with king to g3, queen to e3 check, king to h2, and then queen to f2, really just closing in, king to h3, and finally rook to h4 is mate, as the rook is defended by the queen, and the king has nowhere to go. So this was certainly an unfortunate game played by one of our better chess players in our little tournament, and I would like to thank everyone so much for watching. This is the end of round 2. We will soon start round 3 of Kit's Castle Cup, and round 3 is by far the best round of games in the entire cup so far. And I really hope we get more games like this, and I am very excited to review all of those games. So I would like to thank everyone so much for watching, that decided to stick around to the very end. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and until my very next video, peace out for now.